everyone, and welcome to the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world show made for the fans by a fan. I am your host, as always, Richard Tiemann, and this is the award-winning fan show, and this is another College Gridiron Showcase special as we continue the countdown to CGS 2020. And joining me now is the defensive backs coach, but has quite the history in the NFL. Give it up for Willie Pile. Welcome, Mr. Pile. How you doing?
I'm good, Richard. Thank you for having me, buddy.
Absolutely. It's always a pleasure to talk to former NFL players, especially considering what the event is. It's sort of a last chance, second chance, maybe the only chance for some of these college players to get a look, an interview, a platform, especially to showcase their talents. But we'll talk about that, of course, in a few minutes. But first, let our listeners know about you, your background, where you come from, where you played at, and why you believe in CGS.
Absolutely. Well, to start off, we go with my football background. I played high school ball at West Potomac High School in Alexandria, Virginia. And so many people remember the movie Remember the Titans,
yep.
And that was in Alexandria, but that was T.C. Williams. I went to the rival high school, which was Groveton at the time, but changed into West Potomac High School, and so they were kind of our rivals, that Remember the Titans group, and then our West Potomac. And so I didn't play football until 9th grade, and I live down here in Texas, and that's like a bad word if you say you didn't play football until high school, but my path is more a basketball path. I was born in the Bronx, raised up north, and so all we did was hoop. And I got to high school, and the coaches said, look, we're looking for a quarterback, receiver, and I raised my hand and said, Coach, I want to play, and sure enough, he put me out there, and I had a great first coach, and it allowed me to understand what the game of football really meant: leadership, accountability, being there for your teammates, and I just took it and ran with it. Mm-hmm. And I ended up, winning a bunch of games in high school and made a bunch of plays on defense, and I was afforded a full scholarship to Virginia Tech. And so I played quarterback and DB, and I happened to enter Virginia Tech in the same recruiting class as a young man by the name of Michael Vick. And so
wow.
he was the best quarterback in our area. I was Region Player of the Year. Mike was the second best quarterback in his area because there was a guy by the name of Ronald Curry who was the number one player in America. And Ron C., he's actually the wide receivers coach for the Saints right now. And so Mike was a good player, and I thought I was excellent until we walked on the campus. And I got on campus and realized real quick, that's what a college quarterback looks like. And the coach was like, yeah, I think we got this quarterback thing taken care of. You go ahead and stay on that defensive side of the ball. So it didn't take me long to realize that I need to be doing the hitting rather than getting hit back there. And so we entered it at the same time, and obviously we played a national championship and made a bunch of plays in college. And I was fortunate to get drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs in 2003. So I was drafted by the Chiefs in the 7th round, went to Kansas City, played there for a few years under Coach Dick Vermeil, and really learned the game the right way. Had some great mentors along the way, played with some great athletes, went against some great athletes in competition and practice. Guys like Tony Gonzalez and Priest Holmes and Larry Johnson and Eddie Kennison. So some of the best players at their position, Willie Roaf, Will Shields, I got to watch them operate and work and see how a pro really does it. And so that helped me as I moved to my next opportunity in Dallas as a free agent. I signed with the Cowboys, and that's why we live here. So I was this free safety to Roy Williams from OU, his strong safety. So I was the guy that covered any mistakes on the back end. We let Roy do his thing, blitz, and play downhill. And so it was a good opportunity for me to continue to learn, and I learned under Bill Parcells. And so I got the best of many worlds in terms of coaching and just philosophy on how to understand the game, how to treat people, how to build them up and have them believing in themselves. And so I used all of that information and moved on to my third and final opportunity, which was in Canada in the CFL. So I played in Toronto, and I was up there for 5 years, and we had some good runs up there, played on some really good teams, played on some teams with, a little bit of difficulty as well. And so I finally retired in 2012 and began doing sports performance training. So I was already mentoring athletes. Guys were coming down, wanting to work out with me in the off season. And I said, this is a great opportunity to turn this into a business. And so I created FAST Performance and Fitness. And FAST is an acronym for footwork, agility, speed, strength, and technique. And those are the 5 core areas of sports performance. And so while operating FAST and training with some other folks, I was fortunate to meet a guy by the name of Jose Jefferson. And so Jose puts me in contact with this group that he's creating to do an all-star game and said, man, I want you to come out. Heard nothing but great things about you. Want you to come out and work with the DBs. Well, one of the lead DB coaches was my former DB coach in the CFL, Coach Kent. And so it was one big reunion of guys who had trained or worked or coached together. And when I got out there, I was like, oh, man, this is a natural habitat for me teaching the game because of my background from Virginia Tech in college, and then obviously with Coach Vermeil and Coach Parcells. And so that's my football background and what drew me to being a part of the CGS.
Wow, that's quite a history. One, to just have the coaches at the pro level that you did, and then to play one of my favorite positions, defensive back. I'm such a pro defensive guy. I really do. When, the game of football is so much about who's got momentum on their side, and the agents of that momentum shift and swing. 9 times out of 10, it's a DB. And I love it. I really do love how the momentum can shift on a dime because of a pick or a forced fumble or a strip, whatever the case may be. So, wow. I mean, that's
great. Yeah, that's a great point that you bring that up, because I like how you said the shift in momentum, and you didn't necessarily skew it to good or bad or positive or negative, because we've seen it go both ways, right?
Yeah, we have.
Right, the DB get beat for 6, and now the crowd's into it, and you gave up the deep ball, and now you're on edge, and then they start routing you up with 10-yard stops and comebacks and hitches and slants because you're scared to get beat deep. And then on the flip side, where you really shut down somebody and you make that big pick or one of those intimidation hits across the middle without drawing a flag, which is really difficult to do in today's football, right? And so those are the things, like you said, a DB has such a profound effect on the game. When it's played the right way, right? You can really affect change from a scheme standpoint and also in special teams, because they rely on the best athletes on the field, and we all know that that's the defensive back.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that what you guys do out there on the field is so fun to watch, because you just never know. And, when I played some football way back when, it was, do you want to be, offensive or defensive? And I feel like, everybody wants to be the quarterback, but obviously if you're not going to be the quarterback, then it's like running back, wide receiver. Okay, if you're going to play, you want to be receiver or defensive back. And it's like, I'd kind of rather be wide receiver, because all you have to do is keep the DB guessing. Like, you make the play happen. The DB has to guess what the play that's going to happen is going to be. And I applaud you guys for figuring out, reading eyes, body language, studying coordinators, playbooks, and making sure that you're on them like white on rice.
Man, you said a whole bunch, and that's obviously one of the biggest things that we look for when you're evaluating talent, when you are scouting talent, when you're coaching athletes, is how can you, using proper technique, affect what the offense is trying to do. And that's why the DBs have to be the best athletes on the field. The offense knows where they're going. They know the snap count. They know the timing of everything. It's our job to disrupt it. And so part of my training is working with athletes and teaching them how to change the timing, change the clock. If we can get the clock off kilter just a little bit, now we allow those highly paid defensive linemen to go hit the quarterback. Now we allow those linebackers to get through there and add to a blitz, and then we do our job. And so everybody's looking for that. And that's why the CGS, to bring it back to what Jose is doing, is such a huge opportunity and a platform for athletes to showcase, because we do minimal coaching in terms of, hey, you got to learn this, this route combination and this type of formation and this set. No. We're giving you tips and trays of what the elite athletes at those positions do, be it offense or defense and even special teams. And then we allow you to showcase that, because that's what the scouts want to see. This is their opportunity for the athletes to really showcase their ability in front of the decision makers for across all 32 teams, plus the CFL, plus whatever other leagues, the indoor leagues that are out there, because that's what they want to see. And so from my position, what we're tasked to do is to give them the information that they need, but don't overcoach. Allow the kids to showcase what they can do, because when they get in a training camp, that's what they're going to be asked to do. So we really are giving them a dress rehearsal, a interview almost, a dry run of what it's going to be like when they walk in to training camp sometime in May
Yeah. And one thing that I was curious about, I mean, okay, thought I lost you, but we got you. So I've got a ton of questions, but the most important ones. First off, you mentioned, that you didn't start playing football until freshman year, which is unheard of in the state of Texas. It's kind of unheard of all around. Now, one thing I was curious about that you may have some insight, you may not, as far as if this is even a thing, but obviously starting out later, if you even call it that, I mean, freshman high school still seems like early or just early enough. It obviously didn't hinder your ability to go and be pro and perform at a professional level. But, I cover the indoor football league, and a lot of these guys are looking for that second chance. And a lot of them that I've talked to, they were kind of late bloomers too. They didn't play until mid-junior high or middle school or high school. And I wonder, the guys that show up to CGS, are a majority of them, is it that they're from smaller schools, or are they late bloomers too? Like, can Pop Warner and summertime flag football and middle school football really have that much of an impact on your future career?
You know what? That's an excellent question. So what we've seen at the CGS during my time there, and I believe this is my fifth year, involved with it, fourth or fifth. And what we see is you run the whole gamut. You got guys that were All-Americans in high school and 3 and 4 and 5-star kids who had to transfer schools for one reason or another, had to step away from their original universities or ran into some injury issues. You get them all. You get the small school prospect. We've had kids from University of Texas, Texas Tech, USC. It was one kid I remember distinctly because he went on to have a pretty solid NFL career, a guy by the name of Ray Armstrong. So Ray Armstrong initially was one of the most gifted athletes in America. And I want to say he ended up going to University of Miami, the U. And so he was a special athlete. He ends up leaving and going to another school, a much smaller school, and then he needed that opportunity. And so he comes to CGS, and he's showing the scouts, not only am I quick, not only am I fast, I'm physical, but I didn't lose any of the stuff that made me one of the top recruits in America, right? It's just situations, whatever it was. I'm not sure what the situation was, but I just know that he ended up going to a small school. But then he goes and he makes the St. Louis Rams team, and then he's with the 49ers, and he's gainfully employed throughout the NFL. And so you see that often, where it's not just the small school kid who, bloomed late. You see the kids who everybody wanted, and for whatever reason, it didn't pan out at the original school, or, they ran into some injury concerns. Now, to your other question, there is merit in the kids starting to understand the game earlier. Now, there's a difference between having to play tackle football earlier or playing football earlier. So there are other ways you can do it without doing the wear and tear on your body. Flag football is one of them. 7-on-7 is one of them. There's another version of it out called flex football, rookie football. So what USA, I know I'm part of USA football as well, and what our biggest coaching point or biggest teaching point or biggest point that we want to get across to the parents is that there are multiple entry points to learning the game of football. It doesn't have to be, hey, I just got to put the pads on and start hitting people, because basketball doesn't do it. Baseball doesn't do it. Soccer doesn't do it. All these other sports have multiple entry points, right? When my kid was 5 years old, he played on an 8-foot basketball rim. Then he went to 9. Then he went to 10-foot rim. They didn't say, hey, you're a kindergarten, shoot at this 10-foot rim. Nobody would be successful. Baseball, you start with a T-ball, then you go to machine pitch, then you go to coach pitch, and then it's kid pitch. The distances goes from 60, then it goes to 80, and then it goes to 90 feet. And so there's a progression in every sport. And football was the one that didn't have that progression. Well, now they have it, and they're really encouraging these multiple entry points, flag being one of them, 7-on-7 being another, so that kids can understand and love the game and then allow their bodies to finally catch up, and then they're ready to play tackle. And so I'm not saying that the path that I took is the right path, because my son, I have a 6th grader, and he played football starting in 4th grade. He was physically mature. He was ready to compete. His skill set was where it needed to be to compete at that level. And so he loved it. And he's been thriving as a football player in 6th grade. And now he'll be in middle school, and he'll pick right on up. with the middle school coaches. And so everybody has a different entry point into the sport. What our job is as coaches, as ambassadors for the game, is to create those opportunities for these athletes so they can love it and then hopefully stick with it, from not only from a technical standpoint, but also from an enjoyment standpoint, right? You want the kids to enjoy it so that we can watch them one day play in the CG or in college, and then eventually the CGS, and then on in the professional ranks.
Which I think is awesome that you guys are doing this, and that there's, you know, a lot of opportunity for younger kids, and especially the CGS, clearly, you know, last chance, second chance, or only chance, however you want to look at it. Let's talk about your particular role with CGS as far as being a defensive backs coach. You've seen it all. You probably played through most of the changes, but you're coaching a position where it's like, how do you coach a position that can't do what they're supposed to do, you know? I mean, you gotta, that's gotta be a learning curve in itself.
Yes. And the good thing that we have at CGS is so many experienced coaches, right? That's the one thing Jose has done. He's assembled a staff, a group of experienced, knowledgeable coaches that are gonna give these guys, remember, we're giving out tips, right? We're not teaching them that, hey, you gotta be this 3 technique when they line up in this formation. We want to blitz this. We're not doing that. This is a showcase opportunity. So our job and our role, specifically on the defensive side, is to give them the tips and the tricks that's going to allow them to compete without drawing penalties, that's going to allow them to continue to play fast. The worst thing you can have is a kid, an athlete out there, paralysis by analysis, overthinking, playing hesitant, because that's when they're not able to perform at their max. And so for us specifically, defensive backs, we have to make sure that they're aware of the no contact rule. After 5 yards, you can't put your hands on them. So what do? We teach everything from 4 yards and up. If you're going to get your hands on them, put your heels at 3.5, 4 yards, and that's where you're going to get your reroute. If you're going to play man-to-man and press, you better do it early. Give yourself some room to move your feet, play angles. The game of football is all about angles. Angles to cut off, angles to play back through the man and play the ball. And so those are the things that we teach. We don't teach from a scared, we don't want to get beat standpoint, because that's not how you make teams. That's not how you make money playing football, especially at the highest level. We teach to go make plays. When you know what your play is, when you're confident, then you can make any play on the field. That's what we teach, and that's what we come across to our DBs that we train. When we get to the CGS, they want to see playmakers. We don't want a safety that says, well, coach, I didn't let anybody get deep behind me. We want a safety that's going to put his foot in the ground and drive downhill on that dig because he saw the quarterback staring at him. Because he saw the quarterback after 2 reps, he knows that he likes to look left and throw right. Those are the things that we want to see, because that's what the scouts are looking for. You only get so many snaps, so many plays. And in college, the coaches, they're looking for their scheme to work, whether it's an 8-man, a 4-2-5, a 3-4, whatever it is. They want their scheme to reign supreme, and they just plug and play athletes. When you're at the CGS, it's about you, right? Yes, you want to be successful and you want to create a team environment, but it's the most selfish team environment you can have, because this is about your opportunity as an athlete. And so we got to get that across to our athletes that come to CGS or any All-Star games, but specifically ours. You got to prepare your mind to walk into a locker room and send somebody else home. It's a 20-ounce, we use the analogy, it's a 20-ounce water bottle. It's only 20 ounces of water that can fit in there. You're the 21st ounce, okay? You got to go in and displace somebody else's water drop. That's the way the game of football is. Every time you walk into a locker room, you're literally in there to take another person's job. You're not walking in and there's 15 open spots. It ain't college where everybody's on scholarship. It's 53 spots on a roster. You got to take one of 53. And that's the part that as athletes really start to understand this day and age, it becomes more of a business. It becomes more of a, hey, I got to go in there and it's a corporate takeover. I got to put somebody out of a job. And that's the way that we approach it. And CGS does the great job of creating that, again, team environment where everybody's pushing each other to be great, but it's about my individual reps. How can I get better and show these scouts what they need to see in order to give me an opportunity at the next level?
Yeah, Jose has really done a great job of making sure that these kids have, every opportunity available to them, not just from the interviews with the scouts, but obviously, the on-field reps. He doesn't like the all-star game mentality. He doesn't like the really the scrimmage either. From your experience, you've been through it all. You went through
Yes.
high school, college. You got drafted by. I mean, how does this and what his vision coming to life and constantly being improved on and tweaked compared to the process that you went through?
You know what? That's a great question. When I came out back in '03, I was invited to the East-West game. So that was the game I participated in.
Yep.
I was also a combine invitee. So I trained, I went through the off season, the combine prep training program up in New Jersey with my agency. And so you're right. I experienced all of it. And the thing that I love about this CGS experience is that not only do you get the hands-on experience with the agents, with the scouts, where you get to talk to them and get interviewed by them. That's a huge bonus. You get to see them in that environment. But the other thing that I like is that he puts the focus and the onus on practice. Like the scouts are there to watch us practice. Because at all the other All-Star games, the scouts leave by the time Thursday comes because they don't really care about the game. Like, the game is important, and it's great for media exposure and maybe, move the needle for some athletes. But for the most part, the work and all of the evaluation is done in practice. And that's where you can really make a name for yourself. And so what Jose has done is he's cut out all the other extra noise, cut the fluff, and say, let's get right to the heart of what the scouts want. And he knows because he's been in that world. And so he's coming from a scout's perspective. Hey, what would I want to see if I'm evaluating talent? I want to see them practice. I want to see them do individual drills. I want to see them do one-on-ones, and I want to see them do some team drills. Once you see that, I've seen enough. Any scout worth his salt knows that that's what they want to see. Because what it's doing is confirming, reaffirming, or conflicting the work that they've done already. Right? You've been out to these schools. You've watched film. You've gotten the national report. You've gotten the Blesto reports. So you know what's out there. So your eyes in these practices are either going to confirm and help you stand firm on your evaluation on an athlete, or it's going to totally flip it, whether good or bad, on what you initially thought of the athlete. And it happens in those practice environments. So that's what I love about the CGS is that it's like we don't need a game in 4 quarters and all these other opportunities to get it done. We can get it done in 3 days of practices, a couple live portions, one-on-one, some individual, see how the kids move, meet them at the hotel, talk to them, put them on a grease board, and then we're out. And so I like that he streamlined the scouting process in an all-star environment. And then he's also allowed the networking opportunities for the coaches and the networking opportunities between coaches and scouts. All of those things, the off the field, the financial seminar that he's brought through, the behavioral, the social aspect, all those things that he's doing to bring awareness to this is what it takes to be a pro. You better be on your A game because the scouts, the teams, they're always watching. And I love that about what CGS has done.
So CGS and Jose sold you on the fact that it cuts out all the extras, the fluff, as you mentioned, yes. And I think that that's fantastic because you don't want to put these young, impressionable minds and talent, especially on a platform or a stage where there's going to be distractions. And I feel like a lot of these Shrine games or East-West or All-Star games, there's a lot of distractions, and I feel bad for the kids that get caught up in that. So thankfully, CGS has cut out a lot of that. And some people ask, are we going to do a game, a scrimmage? And it's about so much more than that. And I don't know if they feel like they would perform better in a game-like environment or scenario, but, I mean, save that for the NFL game day is my thoughts.
And I'll tell you this, too, and here's the other portion of that. Many guys, right, that come through the CGS, they've had several draft picks, some guys that were drafted on the second day, some guys that were 3rd, 4th, 5th round picks. They've run the gamut. So they've had success. But a vast majority of these athletes are going to be undrafted free agents. And so if you're really looking at it, undrafted free agents, your first opportunity to make an impression on an NFL team is practice. A lot of those guys don't even make it to the first preseason game. You got to get through 3 weeks of training camp 2.5 weeks now, that they've changed the rules
Yep.
of training camp before you ever get to a real preseason game where you get to hit somebody else. You might have some inter-squad scrimmages, right? When I was in Kansas City, we scrimmaged the Vikings often, right? So we would scrimmage them. But we did that long before we ever got to a real game with real officials and media timeouts and all that stuff. And so, again, Jose and his staff, what they've done is they are mimicking exactly what it's going to take once you get to camp. Because you got to prove it in camp first. What good is me putting you against the Eagles or the Giants or the Redskins if you can't even dominate the guys in your own practice? If you can't do it against Amari Cooper and Dak Prescott, why would I put you out there against Carson Wentz and Alshon Jeffrey in a scrimmage, in a game? That makes no sense. You better be able to handle your business against the guys that you've seen every day. If you haven't figured out that he likes to false step when he comes out of his routes after 2 reps and one-on-ones, then chances are you're not going to be there to get to the scrimmage. You're not going to be there to get to the preseason game. And so that's what these scouts are looking for. How fast can you adapt? How fast can you do your absolute best in those environments to get to those preseason and eventually the regular season games? And so that's the reason why Jose's done a great job of creating this environment and always tweaking it. He's always taking suggestions, and he saw what didn't work. We tried the game path before. We tried the big scrimmage before. And he's like, you know what? These kids need reps. Nobody wants to sit around and watch other people play. They need reps. And again, that is mimicking exactly what you're going to see when you get to training camp. So when these kids leave the CGS experience and go to training camp, it won't be anything new for them. They're like, oh, man, I already know this. I better ball out in practice, or I may never even see the preseason game, right? Because guys get cut up and down all the time. So I need to make it to the preseason game. And how do I do that? I got to prove it in practice. And if you have that mentality, then it's going to carry with you all the way through. And so, again, not saying the other ones are doing it wrong. CGS just found a different way to get the results that the scouts want to see, and it's been proven to work over these years.
Yeah, I think when it comes down to it, the scrimmage that he did last year is kind of a reward for a week's worth of work and drills and everything was really nice because you got to reward these guys with a little bit of honest competition because they're competitors at the end of the day. I mean,
absolutely,
they'll have an eating contest, if the settings are right, So,
absolutely.
Couple of quick questions for you before we wrap this thing up that I've been dying to know. As somebody who went through the draft process, I've always been curious. So, do they call you before they actually write your name down? And did you ever consider saying no when you got a call and said, hey, do you want to be a member of blah, blah, blah? Were you like, well, maybe somebody else will call me? Like, what's that whole situation like, that draft day?
Oh, man. So draft day, depending on when you actually get the call, can be either the most exhilarating or the most stressful time. And I was kind of caught in between the middle of it. So I got calls starting in round 3. So back when I was drafted, rounds 1 through 3 was day 1, which is Saturday. Rounds 4 through 7 was Sunday. All right. So I had a ceiling of the 3rd round. I went to the combine, performed well. I had some injury concerns. I got medically flagged because of my shoulders. And as a safety, the next hit could be the last hit. You never know. So I got medically flagged for my shoulders. And, that was one of the things that I felt knocked me down because if we went off of stats and performance and combine performance, then I was up there with some of the best DBs, ranked in the top 10 in my draft class and that kind of thing. But again, when you have injury concerns, those are the things that would knock you down. And my agent was very straightforward with me, let me know, hey, we got a ceiling of about mid-3rd round all the way through the end of the draft. Just depends on where teams fall and where their guys fall. And so I started getting calls in the 3rd round. And it was just to make sure, I had the right information and all of that good stuff. When it started to really get serious was around the 4th and 5th round. So I'm on the phone with Kansas City, and they were like, we got you on the phone. We're thinking about making you our draft pick in the 5th. Well, they went with another guy. Then I was on the phone again in the 6th round. Same team. Hey, we think with their guy that they were looking at kept getting passed over. So the guys that they had rated ahead of me, they kept getting – it's almost like fantasy draft. Hey, you know what? Oh, Le'Veon Bell's still available. He sat out half the year, but we're going to get him. It was kind of like that kind of feeling where, if the guy that you really wanted was still available, we're going to take him versus getting the guy that we had our eye on if the other guy wasn't available. So I get the phone call in the 7th round, and I'm getting a phone call from the Cowboys and Bill Parcells and a phone call from the Chiefs. Bill and his staff said, hey, we don't have a 7th round pick, but we want to make you our priority free agent. We're going to, give you a signing bonus. We want you to be a Cowboy. And then the Kansas City Chiefs, they're calling and saying, we're going to take you with our 7th round pick. And so at that point, it's, do you have the opportunity to choose your own path like a college recruit and say, hey, I'm going to the highest bidder? Or do you want to see a name scroll across the bottom of the screen? And so I was on the phone and I said, hey, Cowboys, if I don't get drafted, I absolutely want to have a conversation with you guys and potentially sign if I don't get drafted. Well, the Chiefs put me on the phone and I talked to the DB's coach and then the head coach and then the GM. And, I was excited because, again, every guy wants to see their name scroll across the bottom of the screen. And I was fortunate to have that. If they had these camera phones like they did, like they have now, if they had them back then, I would have had a video of the name scrolling across the bottom of the screen, right? Saying draft pick by the Kansas City Chiefs. And so it was a fun experience, and it validated parts of the process. It made me hungrier because I knew that I was better or I could compete at the level of guys who were drafted ahead of me. And so all those things go into it. But I wouldn't let anybody fool you into saying you don't want to see your name scroll across the bottom of the screen. You don't want to hear your name called on the stage and the podium at the whatever site the draft is. You want to hear that name. At that point, it was at Radio City Music Hall in New York. You want to see your name scroll across. You want the guy announcing the picks to say, with the whatever pick, the Kansas City Chiefs select, Willie Pile, Virginia Tech, safety, blah, blah, blah. And so that was important to me. And so I never considered not taking a phone call. It was just a matter of, if you're going to draft me, I would like to hear that name versus, hey, you're going to get signed in anonymity as an undrafted free agent. And the funny thing about it is that one of the guys who was at the combine throwing, who was basically the combine arm that they bring out, these lower ranked quarterbacks, they bring them out to throw for the DBs and the linebackers after the quarterbacks leave from the combine. One of the guys that threw for me was Tony Romo.
Oh, wow.
And Tony, Tony's trying to prove a point. So he's at the combine just throwing bombs, just 50-yard deep balls. You got to high point it, find those lights at the old RCA Dome. You got to find the ball in the air and pick it off and run back. And Tony's throwing his hardest to make sure that he gets that look. And sure enough, the Cowboys gave him that undrafted free agent love. Bill and Sean Payton brought him in, and obviously he became, an all-star and obviously a Pro Bowl caliber athlete for the Cowboys. And so it was funny that we almost were in that same group with the Cowboys because, regardless of how you get there, once you're on a team, the slate is wiped clean. Yep. Because nowadays the investment in these athletes that are drafted aren't as handicapping teams as it did before. And so you could easily say, hey, 3rd round pick, I got an undrafted free agent that's doing a whole lot more than you are. We'll let you leave with your signing bonus, but we're going to pay this guy rookie minimums the rest of the time. And so it's no real deterrent to giving an undrafted free agent an opportunity versus putting a 3rd or 4th round pick who, got his name called, but if you can't cut it, we'll take an undrafted free agent over you, which is, again, one of the attitudes you breed at an environment like the CGS. I just want an opportunity. And if you're willing to work for that opportunity, well, then those will present themselves, and then you just got to run with it.
All right, last question before we wrap up here. What was your favorite interception in your NFL career?
Woo. So the one that didn't count. Oh, my God.
Of course.
So it was the one that didn't count because I've had my hands on knocking balls down. I never got an official, statistically Elias Bureau certified interception.
Oh, wow.
I had one that was worst part, it was in the preseason. It was against Kurt Warner, and it was against the Rams. Oh, man. I broke on this ball. He's trying to throw it up the sideline. I jump. I pick it off. I get a foot down. I know for a fact that the other foot came down in bounds. I know it did. But it wasn't their instant replay rules, and it was preseason.
Oh,
so why would a coach challenge that? So I'm like, dang it. My one time of picking off a future Hall of Famer, I get my hands on the ball, and I don't get it.
Wow.
And honestly, looking back, that was one of the reasons why I feel I could have done more is make more plays picking the ball off. I was known as a cover guy, and looking back, if I was putting now Willie into today's game, into past Willie when he was coming out, I would have been a corner. I wouldn't have been a safety. I would have been a cornerback. I was 6'2", 205. I ran well. I could put hands on people. I was good at press press man. And so looking back, I would have been a converted safety, almost like the kid that's over in Seattle, Flowers, right? Played safety at Oklahoma State, plays cornerback for the Seahawks.
Yep.
That would have been my type of body type, that type of skill set where I could run. I wasn't a 4-3 guy, but I ran 4-5. I could run. I could get hands. I can tackle, right? I can stay in front of people. And so I feel like looking back, I would have been a cornerback, and I would have used those skill sets to cover people. And as a safety, you want to get your hands on a football. And I did it in college, didn't get a whole lot of opportunities in the league to get picks. Obviously, the handful I got, either knocked down. None of them were dropped, just knocked down or big hits to cause dislodging from the ball. And then, obviously, once I got to Canada, I got my mojo back and made a bunch of interceptions there. But in the NFL, the one that didn't count was the one that I remember most was that pick off of daggone Kurt Warner. It didn't even count. Yeah, man, didn't even count.
Well, I'm sure we'll have plenty of time at CGS for more stories. I've got a ton of stuff we could have talked about we didn't even touch on today. But we touched on the important stuff, and that's the CGS and your thoughts on that. But thank you again so much for your time. He is Willie Pile, former Chief, former Cowboy, and the defensive backs coach for the College Gridiron Showcase 2020. Look forward to seeing you there in Texas, man.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm excited, man. Fast Performance is a sponsor of the CGS, and again, that partnership relationship with Jose and what they're doing and what our sports performance company does in terms of training athletes and getting them ready. We do combine prep. We do training for athletes from youth to pro. We work with lacrosse, soccer. Obviously, we have a heavy concentration in football. And so what we're doing, not only representing as a DB coach in my football experience, but also from a sports performance, combine training, combine prep perspective, I'm able to also give that information and that knowledge to the coaches and the athletes and just help them guide along that process. Like, again, Jose's done a great job assembling a staff of mentors, and that's what he wants. Guys who've experienced it, guys who've been through the combine process, been drafted, been undrafted free agent, been cut, been a scout, been a coach. He's done all that, brought us all together, and it's a beautiful mixing bowl of skill sets. And so I look forward to seeing you down there and linking with you and talking some more and helping these kids be on the right platform to get an opportunity. All
right, man. Well, thank you once again. You have a great rest of your night, and safe travels down there, too.
Absolutely, man. Likewise. Same to you. We'll talk soon, Richard.
All right. Thank you. And one more big thank you to Willie Pile for joining me here on another CGS special. Less than a month away. And don't forget, you guys can mark your calendars and follow along the action at collegegridironshowcase.com, as well as at CGS All-Star. That is the Twitter, that is the Instagram, and that is the Facebook page. I'll be down there conducting interviews, doing media stuff, shooting photos, videos, all of the above. So I cannot wait to get down there and get back to it. So thank you all once again for tuning in to another special edition of the F.A.N. Show CGS miniseries.